Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something that's looking, well, pretty fascinating, maybe even a bit wild, over at Ducati in MotoGP.
Yeah, definitely intriguing.
We've got some great analysis here, especially looking at how their top riders, Francesco Bagnaia, Pecco, and Marc Marquez, are, well, they're having really different experiences with the current bike. Let's maybe call it the GP24.5, just to keep it simple.
Good idea. Simpler that way.
And there are some really key tests coming up very soon. So look, our mission for you today is pretty straightforward. We're going to try and unpack the details of Ducati's bike development, get a grip on this contrasting feedback from Pecco and Marc, and sort of figure out what it all might mean for the season ahead. You want the insight, right? But you want it clear and quick. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
So the heart of the issue, really, it just jumps out, is this split, this big difference in how Marquez and Bagnaia are feeling on bikes that should, be pretty much identical. We're hearing Marquez as well, really happy, super happy with the bike, saying it lets him ride in ways he just couldn't before, which, coming from him.
That's a massive statement, isn't it? A huge vote of confidence. But then, like you said, you've got Pecco, the reigning champ, saying pretty consistently he hasn't really clicked with this bike, not since the start of the season.
Yes, still searching for that feeling.
And that just throws up the big question, doesn't it? Is this GP24.5 or whatever we're calling it actually a step up for everyone? Or is its performance really dependent on who's riding it, on their specific style?
And you've got Alex Marquez in the mix too. He seems to be on the slightly older GP24, maybe, and he's looking pretty decent.
Yeah, adding another layer. Maybe the older one is just a bit friendlier. So is the new one just different, not automatically better?
Well, and what's really interesting are the specific things Bagnaia is pointing to. He talks a lot about instability and dirty air.
Yeah.
When he's tucked in right behind another rider.
He's been quite clear on that.
Yeah. And if you connect that, well, think about Marquez's recent crash. Think about some of Pecco's own races where he seemed stuck, unable to overtake.
Like that time Alex Marquez could get past Quartararo, but Pecco couldn't.
Exactly. That specific example. It starts to make you wonder if Ducati have, maybe unintentionally, built a bike that's brilliant, but only if you're leading, which completely changes the game for Pecco.
Totally. It means the bike could be unbelievably fast out front in clean air, but if you get stuck behind someone or if you're vulnerable to attack because of this sensitivity, well, that's a massive problem for winning races consistently, for a championship even.
It basically forces you to gamble everything on the start, doesn't it? Get away clean, build a gap.
Yeah, which explains those really aggressive first laps we've seen between him and Marquez, maybe, if they're both desperate to avoid being the one stuck behind.
Could be. It makes sense. Which brings us to this test tomorrow. Sounds absolutely crucial.
The sources really underline its importance.
Right. Bagnaia is apparently going to test parts Marquez is using first, which suggests he's really trying to understand why he's not adapting.
Trying to feel what Marc feels, maybe.
Possibly. But the key thing, surely, is the comparison with the updated GP24 setup. That back-to-back test. That should tell them a lot.
Yeah, about the bike's real potential and whether this only good when leading thing is, baked into its DNA. Is it a fundamental flaw?
Exactly. A major problem if it is.
And, thinking back, remember Bagnaia saying earlier something like, if I start well and get in front, I can fight for the win.
Yeah, I remember that.
At the time, it sounded like, typical rider confidence, but now, with the dirty air comments and the fact that, let's be honest, Marquez has sometimes looked like he just has more raw pace. It makes that statement sound more like, well, that's his only way to win now. His strategy is totally reliant on getting pole or a brilliant start.
It's like that Formula One thing they talk about, right?
Yeah.
Once you're in that turbulent air wash, even closing a tiny gap feels impossible. The bike just gets unstable.
Yeah, exactly that analogy. So this connects to the whole development direction, doesn't it? And you have to wonder about Marquez's influence. Now he's, effectively inside the Ducati system, even if on a satellite bike initially.
Absolutely. And that story about Pedrosa and Marquez testing a new swing arm years ago, it's quite telling.
Remind us of that one.
Well, the story goes they tested this new swing arm. Marquez's times stayed the same, maybe even improved slightly. Pedrosa's times got worse. It just highlights how Marc can adapt to, even thrive on, a bike that might be challenging for others.
So he can ride around problems, essentially.
Or maybe what feels like a problem to one rider isn't a problem for his style, or he can even exploit it. But the risk for Ducati is, Are they tailoring the bike too much to this one exceptional talent and maybe losing their reigning champion in the process?
Okay, let's quickly talk about that mathematician analogy you mentioned earlier, the Perelman comparison. How does that fit in?
Yeah. Well, it's like,
Yeah.
imagine a super complex maths problem, like the one Perelman solved. He could grasp it, work with it, but give that same problem to someone just learning arithmetic. They'd be lost, right? The idea is maybe this bike is like that complex problem. Marquez, with his unique talent, can solve it, can make it work brilliantly. But for other really, really good riders, it's just difficult, too challenging. It might actually hold them back.
So the worry is, by chasing that ultimate performance edge that only Marc can unlock, Ducati might be making life harder for everyone else, including guys in the satellite teams, though maybe Alex Marquez is an exception there, doing better than expected, perhaps.
It's a definite concern. And it's not just the dirty air issue for Pecco, is it? The sources mention other things.
Right, like braking issues, something about engine brake feel in Q2.
Exactly. That feeling when you roll off the throttle, how the engine helps slow the bike. Crucial for confidence, especially on a hot lap in qualifying. And apparently he's also struggled in right-hand corners specifically.
Which is interesting because Jerez, where he struggled recently, that's usually a strong track for him, isn't it? And he finished behind Alex Marquez there.
It adds weight to his comments. It suggests there's maybe something more fundamental going on with the bike setup or even the core bike characteristics for him.
So if the feelings are so different, it's only natural people would suggest, why doesn't Pecco just try Marc's setup?
Yeah, you hear that talk, but the analysis we've seen rightly urges caution there. Their riding styles are just fundamentally different.
So?
Well, apparently Marquez's bike setup allows the bike to kind of slosh forward under braking. It implies a different weight distribution, maybe more weight transfer to the front, whereas Pecco's style is often described as needing more rear grip and stability.
Okay, so completely different ways of loading the bike into the corner.
Pretty much. Trying to just copy a setup built for such a unique style, it could easily backfire. And apparently Pecco's tried imitating others before, and it didn't really work out for him.
Right, so the advice is stick to your own style, work with Gigi Dall'Igna and the team, and make the bike work for you. Don't try to be Marquez.
That seems the sensible path.
Yeah.
Which leads us to thinking about the development itself. Was there maybe a misstep in the preseason?
You mean like focusing too much on Marquez's early feedback, even though he was new to the bike?
Potentially. Perhaps without giving enough weight to Pecco, the guy who'd won 2 titles on the previous versions. And remember that comment from David Tardozzi after Qatar? It kind of seemed to downplay Pecco's role in the bike's development up to that point.
That was noted.
And, you know, Pecco being so honest, so open about his struggles compared to Marc, maybe that ironically weakened his influence. Like, admitting problems made it seem like Marc had the right feeling.
That's a tough position to be in. So the question is, was the main development direction kind of locked in during the preseason, based maybe on skewed data or Marquez's immediate speed? And are they just applying patches now?
It's possible. And that comment about Pecco feeling like he couldn't just go back to the GP24 feeling, even hinting mid-sentence about other factors. Yeah. Very intriguing. Suggests it might not be straightforward.
Yeah, and it all highlights how unclear the exact specs of this bike are. We're calling it GP24.5. But should it be GP25? Is it a halfway house or a fundamentally new direction?
Exactly. The precise parts, the homologated changes, it's not crystal clear, which, you know, leaves us and you, the listener, wondering what exactly is different under the skin. It adds to the whole puzzle.
Definitely. Even the experts aren't slapping a definitive label on it, which tells you something about the uncertainty.
And finally, it's worth just quickly touching on that early preseason hype around Marquez. Remember how fast he was straight away?
Oh yeah, tons of excitement.
Huge buzz. But the analysis raises a good point. If the bike was such a clear step forward for everyone, why weren't those preseason test times miles faster than the actual race laps we saw later?
Good question. Race weekends are different, obviously, but...
Right. But it suggests maybe Marc's incredible speed on a bike that just clicked for him created this perhaps misleading perception that the development direction was universally correct.
Right.
His talent might have masked underlying issues for others.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together then. It's clearly a really complicated situation for Ducati right now. This bike, whatever we call it, is getting massively different responses.
A real split. Marquez loves it.
Yeah.
Anaya is still struggling to find his way.
And it seems tied to the bike's characteristics, maybe great in clean air, but tricky behind other bikes, and maybe the whole development focus this year. Pecco's issues with dirty air, braking certain corners, it paints a picture of a bike with maybe huge potential, but maybe only in perfect conditions or for one specific rider. And that makes it potentially inconsistent, challenging in the heat of a race battle.
Which is why that upcoming test is just massive. The data they get there will be absolutely fundamental for figuring out the bike's true nature and deciding where they go next with development.
Absolutely critical. So that leaves us and you with this final thought to mull over. Pecco is the reigning champ. Ducati has had immense success with him. Can they actually reconcile these completely diverging rider feelings? Can they develop this bike so all their top guys can fight at the front consistently?
Or is this a more fundamental mismatch? Something born perhaps out of trying to harness Marquez's unique talent that could end up having really big consequences for their whole season, maybe even beyond.
Yeah, what does this whole situation really tell us about that incredibly fine line teams walk, trying to balance different rider needs and feedback when the stakes are this high in MotoGP development? Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.